bring in the immigration team at the beginning. Um, as I said, I mentioned earlier, it really incorporates a lot of movement, taxes, relocation, house hunting. But we're talking about bringing in the immigration specialist from the beginning of that conversation. Even if they're going to do a house hunting trip, it's because there could be processes that could happen while you're in country, but it just sets the roadmap. Sets the expectation because everything else is going to be dependent on that immigration process. So I absolutely think that team should not be an afterthought. They should be brought in from the very beginning. Timelines may shift, but you may be moving a company that doesn't move into a company that doesn't have an actual brick and mortar office, and that country, requires that you have it. So it really is important that from the very beginning you incorporate in the immigration team into those, initial conversations.
Global mobility allows for businesses to have their people where they need them at every moment in time, which is why it allows for people to move around. It is a it it is a partner to the business. It is but it's also sometimes a roadblock. And the reason why I'm saying this is because although, yes, we as global mobility professionals enable the business to move the people where they need them, not every time can we move them at the fast pace that they need them to be. We are a roadblock as well because we have to be mindful of obligations. Like every regulation, we need to be always on top of that. So if something changes, we always need to be telling the business. And so not every single time can we move as fast as they want us to be moving. But that being said, we are, I want to say, the gatekeepers of their compliance.
Global mobility is moving its workforce across borders to achieve organizational goals and also to drive performance growth and to leverage the diverse pool that is available on a global scale.
So I'm so excited about what AI might bring, but I also think there are huge opportunities just when it comes to automation. And a lot of mobility functions, we haven't gotten the same tech support and resources as some of our other HR peers. So I'm really, even for myself, like really focused on automation because I think there's so many opportunities for those things. I always say, like, what is something that like I uniquely as a human can bring value and insight to, and then let's automate everything else. So I think there's huge opportunities with automation, and then AI, I think I just can't even fathom what AI might be able to do, but I'm really excited as companies start to embrace it, and I know the supply chain starts to embrace it, to see how it might make our jobs better, but also allow us to focus on the more human element.
So my name is Diane Kudo-Fouts. Thank you so much for including me on this call today. I really appreciate it. I've been in the mobility space, or I started off with U.S. immigration over 24 years ago. I literally started doing U.S. immigration 3 weeks before 9/11. So for me, change is part of the role. Like Kristen, it's also part of the reason why I've been engaged in mobility for so long. You include people, there's always going to be different factors, even if you see the same case over and over again. So the reality is it's never the same day twice. And I've embraced it, right? Change is growth. So with that said, also, like, I'm a history major, so I look at it from a historical background and looking at it from the perspective of, okay, we knew last November that there was going to be a lot of change coming up in this year. So I try to preemptively manage that change. I feel very blessed to be working for a company whose tagline is build for change. So everybody is already on board with that mindset. And then working within that mindset, learning what my barriers are. So like what the business is willing to do and how to maneuver within that business model for all of our employees in an equitable way. So remaining agile is, I think, is imperative to remain afloat in this changing time.
How did I get into global mobility? Well, as an American living in the Netherlands with a Dutch husband, I was naturally drawn towards the international communities with my friends and with other organizations that I joined and was involved in, starting out with volunteer work and eventually moving to working for a DSP on the road as a field consultant and moving further into the global mobility space until I was hired at Unilever in global mobility.
To the business, global mobility is a critical function. We are a strategic partner to the business. We advise them on so many important strategic matters related to, cost. We provide them with cost projections. We advise them on compliance matters related to relocations. We are a strategic partner that help them meet their goals in initiative. So we are a strategic function, which I think nowadays the business understand how important global mobility is. That's why a lot of companies are adding this function to their, to their like HR department or legal department or whatever the case can be.
I think it's a group of colleagues. We consider ourselves as part of the same team, as part of the same company. So we are, regardless if we belong to global mobility or to HR, we know we are part of the same team working towards a common goal. And we consider this as a shared responsibility. That's how our current relationship with HR is.
So I think for someone who's interested in getting into global mobility, it's really about expressing interest in those specific skill sets that someone needs to handle a population of employees that are expatriates or international assignees. A lot of companies don't have a mobility department, but they do need someone who has that unique skill set or interest in handling expat assignments. So I think asking those questions, being inquisitive, showing what knowledge you do have when it comes to assignees or expats. And if you don't, find ways to learn. There are opportunities for webinars, education sessions, certifications. So really expanding that knowledge. I also think bringing to the table any personal travel experience that you have is really something that helps any mobility professional in their career, because they have that understanding of what it takes, whether even if it's not living overseas, but how it, all the different nuances of traveling and what goes along with.
So my mobility story is kind of funny, because before I graduated from university, I went to see this lady who was doing readings of coffees. You know, in Turkey, it's a tradition. And while she was doing the coffee reading, the coffee ground reading for me, she was explaining my future job, and it didn't make any sense. But she was saying that I was going to work with international organizations, like different parties who are going to kind of assist in different countries. I was going to work closely with the authorities in different countries and with the consulates, with embassies. Like, she was explaining all those bits, and it didn't make any sense to me. And then she was saying, in the long term, I'm going to move to an island. Actually, I'm not going to, because in the start I was living in Turkey. And she said that, well, in the long term, you are not in Turkey, you will move to a big island. And at that time, it didn't make any sense. But apart from that, actually, what happened is I applied for a very different role in one of the big fours, and they invited me for an interview. And during the interview, they started to talk about this role. They started to explain the global mobility, what it means, and the market, and all these different aspects of global mobility, and the team in Istanbul office. And funny enough, after I listened to them, I really kind of like the job description, and I found it very close to what I was looking for at that time. Like, I love reading. I want to work with different people all around the world. I want to learn more and more, and I want a job more dynamic. So at that time, after that interview, I was very eager to kind of receive the second call and everything. And then that's where my journey began actually. I started working one of the Big Four's global mobility teams on tax team. That's how the journey started.